Welcome to Mary Walter Radio, the live cast, unless, of course, you're listening afterwards, in which case it is a podcast. Thank you to everyone for joining me. Thank you to all my new subscribers. You're the best. Love you. Thank you to, of course, all the regulars that show up here week after week after week. You two are just absolutely amazing. You know I love you too. And don't forget, you can also get the audio of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, and Apple Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, and then you and you can always go back and watch past episodes of this if you want to watch them on YouTube and look on the live tab, and also the same thing on Getter. Go to the live tab. Just look for Mary Walter Radio on everything. I want to get to our next guest because we had this gentleman on before. And with everything that went down about Joe Biden, and I have like a list of, my guests that I want to bring back that you guys respond really well to. And he was working his way up the list. And I was like, oh, it's about time to have this guy on. And I saw him at CPAC and I was like, oh, we got to get you back on. And then everything blows about Joe Biden, the Her report, we have cancer tonight, can't say anything bad about him. So without further ado, and he was so kind to come back, Mike McCormick, thank you
Hey,
so
Mary,
much.
you look great in your Villanova shirt.
Yes, because you have a book out, by the way. He has a book out, An Almost Insurmountable Evil, How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Plandemic. So we're going to talk about that too. So there's like so much to discuss. And yeah. I'm still riding my Villanova Pope high.
Yeah, that's totally it, right? He's a Villanova guy. Fantastic.
I know. And he's TKO. He's TKO fraternity guy as well. So you can follow Mike. You can get his amazing book, Joe Biden Unauthorized. It is a fantastic read. Go get it. And that's how you find him on all social media is Joe Unauthorized. Don't go looking for Mike McCormick. Go look for Joe Unauthorized, and you definitely will find him on all social media. And he's also a Substack, Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil. And that Substack, hot. And also you can get his webpage is joebidenunauthorized.com. You are everywhere. This has got to be your Olympics, what we're going through right now. And I get the funny feeling it's going to keep going. So tell us. Let's start with the Her report, because that came out on Friday. And there were some revelations in there, but honestly, was it surprising?
Well, they came out with, Jake Tapper has this goofy book. So they come out with the Axios version of Joe Biden. I think it was a cover story. The Axios version of the Joe Biden Her report audio was a cover story of a cover story. The Her report was a cover story for Joe. And the Axios is saying, well, he's really just a doddering old man. You can't really, we just didn't realize it. And so they played this little chunk of audio. Well, what I did over the weekend, I went back through the Her report transcript, because I do transcript for Joe. That's what I did as a stenographer, right? And so I looked into it, and there's some really weird stuff in there.
Excuse me for one hot second. I totally left out the fact that you were Joe Biden's stenographer, secretary person. I totally left that out because I just assume everyone knows who you are since you were on with us last time. So I apologize for all the new people watching. That was a horrific introduction. I'm so sorry, but that's really what started you on this whole path. And the last time you were on. So if you want to know how he got the gig and what the stenographer does, go look back in the podcasts, whether it's audio or video, and check out Mike's story of exactly what he did. But bottom line is you were with Joe all the time. You were on Air Force Two with him. You were everywhere with him, and you had to write down everything that was being said.
Right.
So going through transcripts.
We may jump into other topics, but I wasn't everywhere with him like Doc Kevin O'Connor was everywhere with him. I traveled with Joe overseas when he went on foreign trips. But when he was here in the States, I basically worked out of the office in the White House and went home at night unless Joe was working late. So now what we have is this cancer diagnosis that everyone's sort of pointing at. What happened with this White House doctor? Where was he? Well, I know that White House doctor. His name is Kevin O'Connor. He was Joe's doctor all through his vice presidency, and then on into the presidency. And there's a lot of questions being asked right now. And it comes out because I think the Her report came out, right? So Friday night, they come out with the Her report and this audio chunk that says, yeah, it sounds like he's a doddering old man. And what do they do on Sunday night? They come out and say, oh, well, he's got cancer. So I feel bad for Joe Biden. I wish him best possible outcome with fighting his cancer. I want him to get well so he can confess to all his crimes, because there's a lot of them. And he should really confess. He's done terrible things to our world and our country, and he needs to confess. And so I hope he gets a chance. You know,
it's not going to happen. We both know that, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
It's not going to happen. So, all right. So let's go back to the Her report. So you do transcripts, which is your thing. And I kept saying on X, I want to know if what the audio recordings, the tape matches the transcripts, but the entire tape was not put out, right? It's only something like 14 minutes that were leaked. It's not the full 2 days of recordings. There's 5 hours of interviews. That's a lot to listen to. And so that's why I read the transcript. You can read through a transcript a lot faster than you can listen to the recording. Transcripts, generally, a minute of spoken word is a page of transcript. What I read in the transcript basically followed that he was speaking at a conversational tone. He wasn't drifting off and getting lost. He was speaking back and forth. And what I read was he was basically denying everything and making his staff responsible for all the problems with the big boxes of classified information they found in his garage, they found on the Chainbridge Road thing. The little bit of audio that leaked on Friday night was specific, where they said he doesn't know what he's doing. He forgot what year his son died in. That comes out just after they asked him questions specific to his Chainbridge Road residence. And I'm working on a Substack on that right now. But basically, to me, that question triggered him to act like the old man who doesn't remember. Because what happened in his Chainbridge Road residence was there were a bunch of boxes found. He had boxes there that were classified. He was working on a book there called Promise Me, Dad, in 2017. And the guy would come over to his house there in Chainbridge Road and look for stuff. And at one point, Joe left a voicemail on the guy's phone that the special counsel Her's office got. And he said, I forget the guy's name. Joe calls and goes, yeah, I found the classified stuff in a box in the basement. I got it for you. So he clearly knew he was getting classified stuff and passing it on to a biographer who shouldn't have it. So that was pretty damning. So when they said Chainbridge Road, all of a sudden Joe goes into like, well, I don't remember. When did Bo die? I don't remember. Stuff like that. Wait, so do you think that was an act? The doddering old fool stuff was an act there?
Yeah, based on what I read. There was stuff in the transcript that I read. So first of all, he had really clear answers to a lot of the questions. And the fact is, the special counsel Her walks in there and he goes, look, we're here. He gives them this sort of kind of preamble speech, but basically said, we're here to write a report. And the report was already predetermined what they were going to write. They weren't going to prosecute them. The idea of a special counsel is they produce a report. The report goes to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Well, that guy wasn't going to do anything. Everybody in the room knew this thing was going to end with an interview of Joe Biden. He nailed that interview. There were things that he said in that interview, like I've heard him talk about different stories he told over the course of his lifetime. There's one story he told about how he became a prosecutor way back in the 60s when he was working for a white shoe law firm in Wilmington. And he nailed the details of that story like I've never heard before. Who the guy was. It was an industrial, basically he was working for this law firm. They were defending, I think, the DuPont company in an industrial accident. And they got the DuPont company off because the guy was in this smokestack or something, cleaning it out, and he got burned up. And it was And Joe got so upset that he was on this winning team that, you know, took this man's means for supporting himself away from him by winning this case. He walked across the street and became a defender, public defender. That was always, and that's when he became the good guy, the really good guy, Joe Biden, everybody could look up to. So that was the story. That comes, he peppers these stories throughout this 5-hour interview where he goes on these long tangents. And the guys are just letting him talk. And he goes and he goes and he goes. So that's basically how he covered for it. But he had such detail in there. And it was a time, this specific time was before he had staff. And he remembered so many of the details of it that to me, it just told me that he was a clear thinking guy who had a clear control of his memory dating back to the 60s. This is 2023 when they did the interview. So, you know, 55 years, something like that.
But when someone has dementia, they lose their short-term memory. They remember things that happened 40 years ago like it was yesterday, but they don't remember what happened yesterday. So could that have been part of what was going on? So just what you're saying is that Joe in the Her report was totally putting on the dementia, was totally putting on the, oh, I don't remember. And is that the way it's been the whole time? Has this been an act the whole time?
Well, look, Joe Biden is one of the most evil, malevolent human beings we've ever had in our government. And so, yeah, he's been covering that up for decades. And I didn't notice that until working around him. You wouldn't really notice it. But when I got to see into the Hunter Biden laptop and understood the level of planning and manipulation and literally evil. That's why I called the book An Almost Insurmountable Evil. Joe Biden is a major part of that because it was evil what they were doing. They didn't care about anything but winning the presidency and getting Joe Biden to be the president. And that goes to this doctor, Dr. Kevin O'Connor. Dr. O'Connor was a guy, like a lot of people who work for Joe Biden, who tagged into his draft. They drafted behind him as he rose up the ranks, and they rose up with him. And they were addicted to his power, and he was addicted to expanding his power and using them. So they did whatever they could. They covered for him. They set up a pandemic that was fake. They set up an illegal alien invasion of our southern border to better the Democratic Party with illegal voters eventually. They set up a Ukrainian war sort of setup that covered for his crimes in Ukraine with the son, the kickback schemes he ran in Ukraine with his son. This is the level of evil that we have. Millions of people around the world died in a pandemic that he wanted to have happen so he could be president. And that's what happened.
Wow. There's just so much here. So let me see here. Porch View Farm says he often uses his son's death to redirect. He's been doing it for years. I found it so hard to believe that he couldn't remember when his beloved son Bo dies. And I will maintain, I don't know the man, but I will maintain that Bo was the hope for that family. He was the one who had it together. Hunter was the ne'er-do-well. It was like the heir and the spare. You know, William's the one who's got it together. Harry's a disaster. It's the same thing in that family. Bo had it together. Hunter's a disaster. And I think that Hunter always lived in his brother's shadow, which is maybe why he's such a disaster. And when Bo died, I think a lot of the hopes and dreams of the Biden dynasty died with him. And that is why Joe just wholeheartedly threw his everything into Hunter, whether it was protecting him, enabling him to continue to use drugs, paying off debts for him, etc. And at the same time, using him to enrich the Biden family. So to your point of it being very evil, I mean, who does that to their kid? But Hunter was a willing participant because I think Hunter always knew he was the spare. He always was the ne'er-do-well son. And when Bo was gone, here was his moment to shine. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know, but that's just what it screams to me.
Bo did some dirty stuff too. Bo did some really dirty stuff. So one of the things that Bo did that was really sort of behind the scenes. So he basically helped Joe slide into the VP slot. In 2008, there was a guy who came to Washington. His name was Larry Sinclair. He was a limo driver from Chicago with a crazy story about driving a limo with this state senator from Illinois named Barack Obama. And they went out and they smoked crack and had gay sex. And he told the story.
That's how I know the name.
You know the name. And he told that story at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in June of 2008. As soon as he finished that, no one covered it. As soon as he walked out of that press conference, he was arrested and extradited to Delaware by Beau Biden. He had an outstanding warrant in Delaware. Beau Biden was waiting for him. Scooped him up, put him in jail. Nothing happens to the guy, except in the meantime, while he's in jail, Joe Biden gets named vice president. He and Barack Obama have a 2008 Democratic National Convention, and they're off to the races. In the middle of August in 2008, Larry Sinclair is released from jail. Charges are dropped. He's free to go, and he flees to England. So that's what Beau Biden did. And he was going to be the next governor of Delaware. And yes, you're right. Joe had this dream of overcoming the Kennedy dynasty by making the Biden dynasty even more. And Beau was going to be the JFK. But Beau died. And so now we have, he hides behind his son. He hid behind his wife and daughter's death before his son died.
Right.
That was the other thing he was always hiding behind.
Wow. Okay. So let me ask you, I just want to go back to the whole dementia thing, because you're blowing my mind by telling me that Joe was putting this on. What about like the 10-mile stare that I saw that my grandfather had when he had dementia, where Joe would be talking and he'd just stop and just like stare? What about when he wandered off into the Amazon? Was all of that put on?
No, I don't think that was put on. I think that was pretty real. I think he went in and out of lucidity. Which as an older guy with people helping you, you can do, but not as a president. It's not a good idea when you're on the stage with the G8 leaders or G7 leaders. So yeah, he was definitely messed. And it all came to a head in the debate there in June. The debate happens, remember, after Hunter gets convicted. That was a big blow to the Biden dynasty. Hunter was supposed to be untouchable in Wilmington, and a Wilmington jury came back with a guilty charge verdict. Well, then what did they do? I think the handlers, the Biden, close-knit people, were the ones that made the decision, and Obama pushed them, and they said, if they gave him some kind of performance-enhancing drugs to get ready for these public appearances, they didn't give it to him that night, and he just completely floundered. That's what I think.
Okay.
And the person who would have given it to him would have been Doc O'Connor.
All right. So let's talk about this. Oh, so Biden in June 20th of 2023 said, 22, was talking about how when his mom would drive him to school, and when it got cold, the windshield wipers would take the oil off the windshield. And that's why he and so many others of his generation have cancer.
Right.
He said, why I and so many others have cancer.
Right.
So at that point, like, I kind of thought the dementia was setting in, right? And he accidentally said something out loud he wasn't supposed to say out loud. So now we get this cancer diagnosis. Did he accidentally let the cat out of the bag in 2022?
Yeah, he does that all the time. That's why he was such a terrible choice for the Democrats to put up as a president in 2020. But they had to. They had nothing to go against Trump. And Biden was there. And look, Biden, malevolent, evil guy that he was, had this whole Plandemic set up. He set it up with Vice President Xi when they were vice presidents together, and they moved it through. One of the things I talk about in my book is in 2011, Joe Biden goes to China, Chengdu, China, and he does a speech. He gets up in front of the Chinese in this Sichuan University in Chengdu, China, and says, "You have too many old people. For every because of your one-child policy. For every one male you have working in the factories or working in the labor force, you have 4 old people. You have too many old people. Well, that started the process that led to 8 years later, a pandemic being released, but a virus being released that killed mostly old people. It killed them in China. It killed them all around the world. That's what it was. And in that book, the Almost Insurmountable Evil, I follow the steps that Biden was part of that led to that. Fauci was in on it. Ron Klain was in on it. And so this whole thing was behind the scenes waiting. And they had to trigger Joe Biden at the very last minute. He was their last hope to stop Trump. Because remember, in January 2020, Joe Biden was 5th in the Iowa caucuses. He was either 5th or 4th. He was way down. The Democrats didn't want him. He didn't win anything until March. He won everything in March, Super Tuesday. All the Democrat candidates dropped. He became the likely candidate who was going to win, and the whole world shut down because of a pandemic. And then what happened? They changed the mail-in ballot rules.
Right. So, okay. So, so much here. I just keep making notes. This is so fascinating to me. First of all, Sal wants to know what's the name of your books. Okay, there's 2 books. Joe Biden Unauthorized.
Oh, no,
That's
no.
the first
Joe
one.
Biden Unauthorized is an older book
Right.
that I wrote before I knew what I was looking at in the laptop. So there's an Almost Insurmountable Evil, how Obama's deep state defiled the Catholic Church and executed the Wuhan Plandemic. And then there's a case to impeach and imprison Joe Biden. And that's where I dug into the Burisma scam and the scam that he did with the Honduran cartels on the southern border. That's where they set up the southern border.
There's just so much.
Yeah.
I just I'm ready to go these things. Okay. So while Joe Biden was VP, Barack Obama had to know all this was going on. Barack Obama had to know that the Biden family was selling influence all over the world, that Hunter was flying all over the world making all these deals. He had to know about the pandemic, right? He had to know what was going on with Ron Klain and Xi, etc. I find it hard to believe that Joe Biden was this mastermind, and now suddenly he's walking into walls with a bucket on his head.
Right. So this is what comes out in the Herb transcript that I found. I went through it over the weekend. I'm like, oh my gosh. They had this series of questions about Joe because they found basically they found all these files. Some of them were classified, some were top secret, but some of them had this marking on them they didn't understand called eyes only. And they go, what's eyes only? We found all these others. What's eyes only? It's not what we really need to look at for the crime. It doesn't factor into this potential crime, but we just need to know. Joe said, eyes only is when me and my team discuss amongst ourselves ideas that we don't want to share with Barack Obama and his people. They were running scams and they had all these folders, eyes only. Joe had his own little crew, inside job crew, the whole time. I can name the names if you want me to name them.
Well, yes.
Yeah. So Joe Biden early on puts into the National Security Advisor slot a guy named Tom Donilon. Tom Donilon becomes a guy that sets Joe up to be the Manchurian candidate. Tom Donilon right now, it went Catholic. He's in this book because he's part of the sort of the Catholic undermining of the church, the Obama-Biden undermining the church. But he was very connected to China. He's now BlackRock's man in China. He's been BlackRock's man in China since he left the Biden presidency, working for Joe Biden in 2013. So as soon as Joe Biden gets close with Xi and Xi becomes a president, then Tom Donilon goes and works with Xi in China to sell out America through BlackRock. That's the National Security Advisor. Then there's Dennis McDonough, who goes across. There's Jake, not Jake, the White House press secretary, was a Biden guy, and I worked for him. I can't remember his name off the top of my
Now
head.
that you said Jake, I've got that stuck in my head.
Jake Tapper is what I'm thinking of. But anyway, so Biden had all this influence into the White House. He would send these people across West Exec. They would work their way up. Tony Blinken became an Obama guy after working for Biden. So
Jay Carney.
Jay Carney, that's exactly right. Jay Carney was a Biden guy, and he went across and became, the spokesman. So that's how Joe Biden influenced his way in and had this inner cadre. The inner cadre was a guy named Ted Kaufman, Ron Klain, Mike and Tom Donilon, and a guy named Steve Ricchetti, who was chief of staff. In her transcript, they talk about Steve Ricchetti driving his SUV up to his minivan up to the National Observatory as Biden's moving out, and he puts all these boxes of classified documents in the back of his minivan and drives off, and nobody knows where he goes. That's Steve Ricchetti. Steve Ricchetti then worked for Biden in the White House when he became president. Steve Ricchetti is, I think, the mastermind behind the southern border invasion by illegals. That's what I think he was doing with Biden.
Insane. And it's Sue says, my mind is reeling. I'm with you. I am with you. This is such crazy stuff. I'm so glad we have time. This is not a radio interview where I'd have to let you go after 8 minutes, right? Because I would be screaming right now. You got to get the book, A Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden. And the other one that ties in, especially because I want to ask you about the Pope and everything now with the new Pope and all this other stuff, and Almost Insurmountable Evil, how Obama's deep state defiled the Catholic Church and executed the Wuhan Plandemic. All right. So what role, we talked about Joe Biden's inside crew. I always thought, and this is probably what they wanted to portray to the people, obviously, that Joe Biden had dementia. Joe Biden, he had that shuffle going on. There are people, for instance, Dr. Drew was just saying on Gutfeld on Friday night that he absolutely has signs of Parkinson's to some degree. There's some of that in there. He admitted that he had cancer in 2022. Didn't mean to say it out loud, but he did. So we knew that. What role did Jill play in this? Excuse me, Dr. Jill play in all of this? Because to me, she seems to be the one that they dragged her out of there. She was clinging onto the drapes in the Oval Office and they had to pull her out by her feet. But she seems to me to also be the one that after that horrific debate, which by the way, I think they pushed for early in order to expose Biden for what he was, in order to set him up, right? And Jill knew what happened and she was mad about what happened. So, and I'm not going to say something here, and this is terrible. And I'm really I swear I'm not a horrible person, but I just think she's so evil and so cunning that the reason she kept pushing for Joe to stay is she knew damn well he was going to die in office and she wanted a state funeral. That's how I view her.
Wow.
I need to say that, that's really horrible to think that of someone, but she clearly in my book has zero problem with elder abuse. Look I think what she's did to her husband was absolute elder abuse. But what you're saying is that Joe was pretty much in on the game up until recently. He knew what was going on.
Right. So, Joe was clearly diminished before he started the presidency. I was on Fox News in September 2020, and I said that on Fox News, Laura Ingraham. I said, look, he's half the man he used to be. He had diminished substantially. He was a pretty fit guy in 2017. Walking up and down the aisles of Air Force Two and a black turtleneck and khakis. He was fit. He was ready to go. And he could go for long days. And his mind was pretty good with just talking off the cuff and off the cuff. I noticed as he was running in 20, they hid him in the basement. That's why they ran the pandemic, so they could hide him. And they did. And he wasn't very good at it, but he only had to do it well for about an hour or so at a time in the debates, in the speeches, and he managed that, and the press covered for him. In 2021, the Super Bowl, right after Joe gets in, CBS is running the Super Bowl. Norah O'Donnell has a chance to interview Joe Biden for the Super Bowl audience. It's a huge audience. It's a big get for the president. She teases out, I'm going to do a 20-minute sit down with President Joe Biden. It only aired for 12 minutes. They couldn't
That's
go
right.
the full 20 minutes because they had to edit it out because he was so goofy. So, and a little bit after that is when he goes up those stairs on Air Force Two or Air Force One and trips. If you look at him walking as he approaches the steps, he's got this like Herman Munster walk. You can
Yes.
tell that physically he's diminished, and they're cooking something with his medication or something, and that would be Dr. O'Connor, who was supposed to keep track of his prostate. That's all connected.
So, okay, all right, let's go to his prostate, shall we? Never thought I'd say that sentence, but let's talk about the former president's prostate. And I know way more about prostates and PSAs and everything else than I ever wanted to know in my life. When you are the president, you have the best healthcare in the world, right? Like you've got the best. You go to Walter Reed. These people are, again, you've got the best that money can buy because you have taxpayer money to pay for it. If he had cancer in 22, now according to Ezekiel Manuel, Rahm Emanuel's brother, who is a physician, he said on Morning Joe that Joe Biden had that cancer when he came into office in 2020. He had prostate cancer at that point because you don't get to where it is now in that short of a period of time. So this had been ongoing for a while, and it's doubtful that they didn't know. If that's true, why would it not have been treated? Because prostate cancer, if treated, is survivable. So, he's at a 9. It was whatever the score is a 9. It only goes to 10.
Right. That's a question to ask Joe and Jill, creepy Joe, creepy Hunter. When you describe Jill, Hunter was just as bad right there. And so was the rest of the family. I mean, the family is really creepy. And they were all hung up on living in the White House and having this glorified thing. They had a wedding in the White House. His granddaughter got married there, Naomi. So, they were trying to redo Camelot the Biden way. You may be right about the state funeral. You may be right. I always thought, because when Joe Biden does this interview with her, he thinks he's going to get reelected. I mean, he just has to skate through this thing and he's going to get reelected because he knows they're doing stuff against Trump that's going to get Trump. And it didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work. The lawfare didn't work. And then they went to the other stuff, the shootings. And I don't know if Joe knew about that or not, but we will find out. So,
will we?
I think we will. I think there's going to be whistleblowers that come forward eventually, but they're going to have to see some serious consequences for people in the meantime. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So
I look at I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought, and then I can go ahead.
Joe's dementia. I wouldn't call it dementia. I just say older guy. But I'll go to Dr. Connor for a little bit because he's the guy who was supposed to be watching it. That's what you asked about was the healthcare. So
Right.
A White House doctor is with the vice president every minute he's on duty. He goes back to the Naval Observatory, and until he's down for the night, he's there. Doc O'Connor was a nice guy. He was a friendly guy. He was a cheerful, optimistic guy, but he had no life except Joe Biden. The glorification of the Joe Biden office was his life. And moving on up into the White House to be the president's doctor was probably something that appealed to him so much he was willing to do whatever it took to help that guy get there. It's his patient. In his mind, he's helping his patient, even though physically he's not doing good things for him.
Okay. So, and it was interesting, and of course the media is totally complicit. We'll talk about the media coming up as well. I want to get to some questions here just very quickly. Sal says, so Biden was basically working against Obama and plotting to harm America for political gain, and Obama didn't know it?
Yeah. I think Obama knew part of it, but he didn't know all of it. Look, I'm going to tell you a quick story. So I saw this in the Her report, and I've talked about this on other Substacks, and in my Substack a lot is a lot of information. So in 2005, I took a helo trip with Dick Cheney to Pakistan. And one of the things that I found recently in a bunch of documents I was clearing out of when I was moving was the map of this helo trip. Well, it struck me as odd that we went on this trip. We went to Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. It struck me as odd we took this helo trip up into the mountains where USAID was doing earthquake relief. Well, the helo trip flew over Abbottabad, Pakistan. That's where Osama bin Laden was killed. And I started digging into it. Why did Dick Cheney fly over Abbottabad in December 2005? There were pictures on a CIA legacy website of the CIA surveilling the compound where Osama bin Laden was killed in 2004 and 2005. They knew where he was in 2005. Cheney went back to Pakistan in 2007. I was on that trip too. What's in her report, they asked him about this. He wrote this big memo to Obama on Thanksgiving night of 2009 to basically explain from his super experienced expert in foreign policy background what they needed to do in Afghanistan. And so these her guys are asking him, and they have to be careful how they ask because some of the stuff that's in this memo is classified and they can't talk about classified stuff. So Biden starts talking about it. This is him blurting out stupid stuff. He tells them, look, I had to write this thing because it was important. We had to have the president understand. We were having discussions with state, the DOD guy, Gates, Bob Gates, who was held over from the Cheney years. Hillary was there, and Panetta was there, and the president was there. And we had to discuss what we were doing in Afghanistan. And I said, we're going to kill Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. He said this in 2009. He wrote it down. And then he explained it to this her guy in 2023. So he knew in 2009 that Osama bin Laden was on ice in Pakistan waiting to be killed. To me, that says Bush and Cheney set this thing up with the Pakistanis. They put Osama bin Laden in this house in Abbottabad. They kept him on ice. They set up this whole let's go around the world and look for this bad guy scenario. Biden and Obama inherit it. And Biden has to talk about in this memo to Obama, we're going to do this. How do we do it? What he was asking was, what happens to the Afghanistan mission after we kill Osama bin Laden in Pakistan and we get rid of the Taliban? And that was the question. Well, we got to keep it going. We got to keep it going. This is 2009. They didn't kill Osama bin Laden in Pakistan until May 2011, when it worked out really well for the re-election in 2012. So this is what we're up against. When I say evil, I mean evil.
Wow. Okay. I don't even know where to go. So you're telling me, though, that Bush could have taken Osama bin Laden out, but they chose not to, and they chose to just pretend like they were looking for him?
Yes. Right.
To keep the war going? Wait, is that to keep the war going because it would keep money that was being funneled to our troops to never really make it to our troops, and it gets whitewashed, it gets washed through a lot of laundered is the word I'm looking for, through a lot of different hands?
Right. And Bob Gates, who was the Secretary of Defense at the end of the Bush years, just has to be the guy that they have as the Secretary of Defense to make sure it flows into the next crew. And
that's
so
why
this
he
is
was
one other
kept
thing.
over.
On that trip, as we're doing these helos over Abbottabad in 2005, there's a lot of press on the trip. Dana Bash is on that trip. She's a CNN correspondent to this day. Her husband at the time was Jeremy Bash. Jeremy Bash is an intel guy. He was closely tied into the intelligence community. They divorced in 2007, but in 2005, they were married. And when Osama bin Laden got killed in Abbottabad in 2011, Jeremy Bash was working for the CIA Directly underneath its director, Leon Panetta. He was his chief of staff. In other words, I think in 2005, Jeremy Bash knew what was going on with bin Laden. He told his wife. She went over there. She does an interview with Cheney over there, and I have a transcript of it. This is all in my Substack. The transcript, she asked Cheney a question. She goes, there's reporting that Osama bin Laden may be in different parts of Afghanistan. Do you know where he is? And Cheney says, Dana, I can't answer your question. And she kind of pushes him on it, and he goes, I can't answer your question. Even if I knew the answer, I couldn't answer your question. It's classified. And that's, I can neither confirm nor deny. But this is right. CNN being at the center of this fake news operation to keep everyone worried about Osama bin Laden when he was under wraps the whole time. Dana Bash was in on it. The CIA was in on it. USAID was part of it. It was all part of it.
Oh, I love talking to you. Can I just say, this is like, no, my husband, well, I'm gonna, when we're done here, my husband's gonna look at me and go, do you need a cigarette and a drink right now? That's exactly what he's gonna say to me. By the way, I think Suze was the one who said, I did not have talking about the president's prostate on my bingo card for this podcast.
Right. The ex-president's prostate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Biden was basically working against, right? Okay, so that's what we talked about. Porch Before makes a good point. Let's not forget the two aneurysms.
Yeah, right. But,
so did they ever come into play at all here? Do we know?
Biden talked about that a lot. And, he worked himself physically back into rehabilitating himself. He talked about it a lot. I had a cranial aneurysm. It was in 1988, right? When he stopped running for president, he had to go to Walter Reed, had cranial aneurysm, almost died. Loves the nurses. They're my angels, all this stuff.
Oh, that's right. Right.
Joe Biden stuff. But, yeah, so he had that, but he worked himself. He said, my doctors told me I couldn't do any more physical activity except for weightlifting and golf. And I play both of those and I'm great, So that was Joe Biden. But he did work himself back into fitness. He became, physically, when he was vice president, he was pretty spry for a guy his age. I mean, I would look at him walking down the aisle in Air Force Two, and I'd be like, you know what? If I get to be his age and I'm that fit, I'm in good shape.
Right. Right. Rebecca says, we already know how evil Jill is. Just look at the things she did to her ex-husband, Bill Stevenson.
Right.
Who to this day says that she had an affair with Joe on him, and that's why they got divorced. To this day, he says that.
Right. I believe him.
I don't believe a word that woman says. Sal, I blame Jill and their staff for elder abuse. How did Jill legally get to run that cabinet meeting and no one protested?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was weird. So many weird things they did. And they just, because the press let them, right? The press was complicit in this all along. They just let them do what they wanted to do. They let Joe fall down the stairs on Air Force Two. Oh, yeah, he just tripped. It was a windy day. It's just ridiculous.
It was a windy day.
Remember that?
Oh, Deplorable News says this was the plan to get a second term, and now he had prostate cancer, bail out after 3 months, let the other useful idiot Kamala Harris take over and be a placeholder.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So, okay, so let me ask you this. So I think, that the coup that happened with Joe Biden, Pelosi, Obama, Ron Klain, maybe Susan Rice involved there to get Biden out, right? After that horrific debate. And that was the setup, and that's how they got rid of him. And they didn't want Kamala Harris because they knew she would be a disaster.
Right.
Right. So they wanted the mini primary that we all heard about. And then apparently Mark Kelly was going to win because they never actually let anyone win a primary on the Democrat side. They were going to pick Mark Kelly to win that primary because he probably would have been formidable against Trump. Because he's not a cackling idiot. So the bar is low. So he would have been the nominee. And then Dr. Jill, on her way out, because she was obviously very bitter and mad about all of this that happened and probably felt very betrayed, had Joe slip that tribute to Kamala Harris and crown the heir apparent there in that speech. And there goes the plans for the mini primary right out the window.
Right.
And so now they're stuck with Kamala Harris.
I
And
think Joe did it. I think that was a Joe Biden move. He knew how to fight back, and he did. I think could be both of them, but I really see a lot of Joe Biden in that.
really?
As soon as they came at him, he went right back at them, knowing where their weak spots were, and he knows policy. Joe Biden, after 50 years in Washington, he knows how to start things and he knows how to stop things. He put a stop to any noise that would put her, it was his revenge, really.
See, to me, that is so weird because up until you have convinced me, I just thought Joe was a bumbling idiot
Yeah.
and has been for years and years and years and had no clue what was going on and wasn't doing anything. Like he was inside, he didn't know what was in those executive orders. Biden wasn't doing anything. There was this unelected cabal that was running the White House and Dr. Jill. But what you're telling me is, oh no, Joe's putting that on for the purposes of getting through stuff because, oh, old Joe, but they were going to hide him and get him through to the election.
So one of the things that comes out of her transcript, the report that he did, is how Joe manages his staff. And so he tells him, he said, look, I'm the guy. They went through my Senate, all the people in the Senate. I had the people that worked for me the longest. And he named names: Steve Ricchetti, Ted Kaufman, Ron Klain. And so what happened was Joe would surround himself with these guys, and they became like the mafia crew, where he didn't really have to be cognizantly directing things like, I want this to happen right now. All they needed to do was have a discussion with him in the room, in the present. He'd look at him and kind of nod, and they knew what they wanted to do. And I think that's how they ran it. It's just kind of like a gang, where the gang was more powerful than the leader. The leader didn't have to be all powerful. Like Trump is an exact opposite. Trump is such a singular personality with so much ambition and so much energy and ability that he does lead everything. And people sort of just zoom up behind him and try to fill in as he's rushing ahead. Whereas with Joe Biden, it was a group of people. Obama kind of let Joe Biden do a lot of stuff in the White House. And frankly, my impression was from 2014 on, Obama worried more about his golf game than running the country. He didn't really care. Joe Biden did everything. And Biden did everything because he wanted to push Hillary out of the way. And he would have, except Beau Biden died and it took the wind out of his sails. So Hillary walks into the presidency candidacy and completely messes it up.
Oh my gosh. Jimmy Jones listening from North Portland in Oregon. Yay. Hello to you all. Welcome. Welcome. Star Driver says Jill was mad because all the money that they were getting with Joe being in charge got cut off. They have nothing to sell anymore, not even Hunter's finger paintings. And that was that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because there are rumors that the Bidens are broke.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's been some discussion about book deals and things like that.
Right.
But Hunter took a lot of money. Hunter's lawfare took a lot of money out of them. And if they are broke, they may have money offshore in places. So they have to be broke, or else everybody realizes what's going on.
Well, they tried putting Joe on the talking tour, right? Trying to have him go out and give speeches. That didn't go so well.
No. And I mean, who wants the guy that was the worst Democratic presidential candidate ever to come and do anything for him? There's no leadership in the Democratic Party. Joe Biden used to have this saying he'd talk about when he was talking politics. He had this general saying, this generic saying: the moral disapprobation of society. That's what he and his family now face. It's not just Republicans, it's all of society. It's not just America, it's global.
Yeah.
They face that. What do? We're going to find out what happens to a family when they face the moral disapprobation of society.
All right. So I want to just keep telling people you can read so much more at Mike's Substack, Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil. Go check it out. I'm telling you, you will go down the rabbit hole. All right. And you can, his webpage is joebidenunauthorized.com. You'll see the listing of all the books. You'll see the Substack there. You can find him on all social media at Joe Unauthorized. I quickly, because I want to get into what's happening with Vance and Rubio going to visit Pope,
Yeah.
as they used to call him Bob, Pope Bob.
Yeah.
Pope Leo. But very quickly, what's going on with the media right now and this attempt to whitewash themselves. I was going to play some audio for us and some video, but you're far more interesting in that than that. So I dumped it. So we're not doing that. I want to talk to you and hear from you. So, you know, Jake Tapper, talk about a set of balls on a guy, right? Like what a set this guy's got on him. Oh, I had no idea. What are you kidding me? Everyone's calling him out. Megyn Kelly called him out to his face and played the clip where he cut Lara Trump off totally and said, you're making fun of Joe Biden's stutter. She said, what I'm talking about, I'm stutter. I'm talking about the mashed potato head. That's what I'm talking about. And he cut her off. How is the media going to be successful in whitewashing their hand in all of this? And they literally helped the criminal enterprise and covered for them. Can they whitewash themselves?
Well, quick answer, no. The media is failing. Trump's done a great job realigning the White House briefing room. He kicked AP, Reuters, and Bloomberg off the plane when he did his big Middle East tour. Wow. That's a big moment from a guy who used to work. I used to work in the White House and thought they were the kings of the media because of all the hard work they did and all the reach they had. Turns out they were just being paid off by USAID to be pro-Democratic Party, and it was all fake. And now everybody knows it. I know it. You know it. Your audience knows it. So, yeah, they're in trouble. Jake Tapper. So in this book right here, that's called 15 Years of Deplorable, White House Memoir. It's on Amazon. I have a segment in there where I was in the White House. This is the first book I wrote. I self-published it. It was basically written as me and a guy who worked in the Obama White House, saw Trump amidst all these press people that didn't know that Trump was doing well. And I knew Trump was going to win. And then when he won, I was like, man, I got to write this book. And this is after I lost my job. So I got pushed out of the office, kind of cancel culture stuff came and got me. So I wrote that book. In it, there's a portion where I talk about Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper did a terrible thing right in front of me at the end of the Biden vice presidency. He was going to do an interview with Joe Biden in January 2017. Trump was due in a week or so. Jake Tapper's in the vice president's ceremonial office. I'm helping set up. There's not many staffers left in the building. They're all leaving. So I'm the guy that's sort of basically babysitting the press. There's two camera guys for CNN and Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper looks at his BlackBerry, and all of a sudden he lifts up his head. He's standing in the front of the room. He's got this trench coat kind of thing on, raincoat. And he said something that I just couldn't believe he said. He mocked and made fun of Barron Trump. Just a little kid. He said something really sleazy and nasty about Barron Trump. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I can't believe a grown man would say that. And the other two guys were his, he's the talent. They got to be there for the talent. They didn't say, no, we all just were like looking at the floor like, whoa. And he tried to keep saying it. And no one wanted to engage with him. And finally, so he sort of had to like blurt out this kind of excuse about why he said it. It was disgusting. This is a grown man. This is a cowardly grown man mocking a young man behind the scenes. And I think he did it because he thought I was with the press office and that I would go back and spread the gossip that he had with his name on it to get him some brownie points with the Biden people or the Obama people. And the thing was, like, we exchanged phone numbers. Like, I had to walk into the bathroom. He goes, "Hey, if you see anything in here, let me give you my phone number." And I said, "Okay, sure." So I called him, and he answers phone, Tapper. So I knew it was him, and I got rid of that number after Trump came in. When I realized how bad things were with the press, and CNN was a big part of it, I got rid of that phone number. I've never watched CNN since. I don't have anything to do with them. But Jake Tapper isn't man enough to have me on his program to tell him that he's a bully who should not be doing journalism in front of American audiences.
That's insane. Absolutely. I don't know how you did it. I would be like, "Ugh." But you're getting your revenge, and you're getting that bile out by writing it all and putting it
Right.
all out there and sharing it. I know you were on with my former co-host yesterday, so I forgive you for doing his show first before mine, but that's okay. He's a great guy. I love him. Okay. I don't want to keep you here for too long. Please, everybody, just check out his Substack, Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil. Go to joeunauthorized.com. You'll find all the links there. You'll find all the books there. One of the things I want to go into, you do have the book, How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church.
Right.
You now see Vance and Rubio sitting with Pope Leo, the first American Pope, Villanova grad. And here he is, and they're sitting down. You've got the VP and the Secretary of State, both Catholics. Vance being a convert, so they're like reformed smokers. He's like super Catholic. And what does this say? I have to tell you, it also seems to me that since the since the assassination attempt on President Trump, he has become more religious.
Yeah.
He's a changed guy. He had that singer singing the Ave Maria at his inauguration.
Yeah.
He sang when he went back to Butler, singing the Ave Maria. The First Lady is Catholic. I mean, he had adoration of the Eucharist at Mar-a-Lago with a bunch of Catholics as well.
I was at that event.
Were you there?
Yeah.
So jealous.
It was really, and it was really spiritual. It was Catholics for Catholics. They had a big ceremony there, and it was very spiritual. So yeah, you're right. The whole trend is a lot more spirituality in the White House than I've ever seen. President Trump came out on the Truman balcony at the Easter egg roll and talked about Jesus.
Right.
They've never talked about Jesus, but he used the name Jesus as part of the day. It wasn't about the Easter bunny. It was about Jesus. That's what Easter is. So yes, what did J.D. Vance and Secretary Rubio do over there, Vice President Vance? Vice President J.D. Vance went to the Vatican on Easter. That's a big thing. He went there, and I think he did that as a confrontation of who Pope Francis was. Pope Francis, in my book, was installed by bad people in the Obama Biden operatives with the help of a guy named Theodore McCarrick. Theodore McCarrick,
right. Oh, yeah.
I make a pretty good case. He was a CIA operative. There's a lot of information in my Substack about old CIA files from the JFK. They just released these things that point to Pope Paul VI was working for the CIA in the 40s after the war with this guy named James Angleton, who became the super spy that's kind of dirty with the JFK stuff. And then he puts McCarrick on this path to moving up the ladder. McCarrick becomes a globe-trotting guy. Eventually, when Biden comes in as a vice presidency, he knows McCarrick. He's known McCarrick for a long time. They send him to Argentina in 2012, twice. He goes there in October. He goes there in December. When did Pope Benedict retire? In February of 2013, just 6 weeks later. And who came in? Bergoglio, the Argentinian guy. They never talk in the Vatican report that I read about where McCarrick went when he went to Argentina. And who wrote the Vatican report? Cardinal Parolin. Who did J.D. Vance visit on Easter? just 3-4 weeks ago?
Oh,
Cardinal
yes.
Parolin and Pope Francis. And who is no longer in power in the Vatican? Cardinal Parolin and Pope Francis.
Let me ask you, could what we be seeing here, and I want to let you go, and I have to tell you, Porchview Farm says, Mary's hitting home runs with the guests. We're very lucky to have Mike this long. Star Driver, Mike is a great guest. I told you, they loved you the last time you were on. Rebecca had to leave. Rebecca, you're just going to have to catch up the end of this online. You're going to have to just catch it on YouTube, get her Apple Podcast, Spotify, or Spreaker. And Sue says, my head hurts.
Yeah, right.
So could we be seeing with President Trump, it seems like he's making a move towards this Pope, towards this Vatican.
Right.
And to me, Pope Leo seems to be very different from Pope Francis. I don't know. I think that that needs to be seen. But to me, I'm hoping for a relationship of the Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, JP2.
Yeah.
Right. I would love to see that again.
Right.
With Trump, JP, Pope Leo, and then, whomever. Unfortunately, Trump's only got 3.5 more years.
Well, that's why JD Vance is in the middle of it. JD Vance.
Oh, right.
Right. JD Vance is your next in line guy. And so is Rubio. I mean, he put both those guys. That's Secretary of State and Vice President go at the same time to talk to the Pope, just to first mass. That's a big message. And then they both had meetings with him afterwards in the morning. And they're talking about now having the Vatican as the site for the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine to end their war. That would be a wonderful.
Oh, I love that.
If they could have the Vatican be a method for achieving peace in that war, that'd be wonderful. So I think, and this Pope is open to it. And I think, part of what's happening in the Vatican and part of what JD Vance told Pope Francis in Parolin when he went there on Easter, we're not giving you any more money. They gave them so much money for all this through these Catholic NGOs, through the Biden administration, to bring in these refugees. They went to this new Pope and said, we're not talking about welcoming refugees anymore. We're going to send people back to their home countries, and we're going to take care of America. And Europe is not going to be infiltrated with refugees either. You're going to stop doing that. And I think he's going to stop doing that because he's playing ball with Trump and Vance and Rubio.
Quick question here. Gregory says, in regard to the installation of popes, what about the Holy Spirit? I'm not quite sure what he means there.
Well, I think that, JD Vance went and confronted Parolin and Pope Francis, and then God's will was done. He left and they died. Pope Francis died. Parolin was not voted in. He was a bad guy. And so that's the work of the Holy Spirit in selecting a Pope. I think there was some political influence. I think Trump had some help from Cardinal Dolan. Cardinal Dolan was a big person who helped Trump out against Kamala Harris when he hosted the L. Smith dinner in New York. Trump made a big splash there with Catholics. Kamala Harris didn't go. She struck out completely. And Dolan made a big deal out of it. And Dolan then became a significant factor in setting up the American Pope, Pope Leo. So the Holy Spirit was at work behind a lot of that.
Gotcha. I misunderstood what he was saying there. Star Driver says, the new Pope from Chicago is on a mission from God.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, listen, I hope so. So, Mike, I want to thank you so much for your time. I try to keep it to an hour, and we did 1 hour and 4. So,
okay, perfect. Yeah,
perfect. So, thank you so much. You, like I said, you have to be one of the most fascinating guests that I have had now twice on this podcast. You are amazing. And I'm telling everyone right now, first of all, share the heck out of this podcast, but also please check out Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil, or joeunauthorized.com. You think this was mind-blowing? like I said, it is a rabbit hole. It's way better than going down the rabbit hole of videos on Facebook. Okay. This, what you're going to find there is great reads, and you're going to educate yourself, and your mind is going to be blown. So thank you so much. Follow him everywhere. Joe Unauthorized. That's where you can find him. Don't look for Mike McCormick. Look for Joe Unauthorized. Get the books, get all three of them. But the latest is The Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden, and also how Obama's deep state defiled the Catholic Church, and a case, to impeach. And yeah, a case to impeach and imprison Joe Biden. That's the one I had. That's what I said. Okay. I said it twice because it's really good. Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Barry. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. God bless. Bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Was that insane or what? That was crazy. Every time I have him on, my mind is blown. So Joe Biden wasn't crazy. Joe Biden was not President Pudding Pants. Apparently, Joe Biden, according to the guy who knows him really, really well, was putting that on when things get dicey. He puts it on. And then, I mean, he slowly got worse. But as recently as when he sat down with her for that interview, you know, the questions get tough. And then Joe Biden, you know, kind of off he goes on a tangent, and he knows how to play it. Crazy, crazy, crazy. All right. As I said, I'll put all the information up. Just so you know, this Friday, I am in for Brian Kilmeade on Fox News Radio from 9 a.m. to noon. So it's around locally, it's syndicated nationwide. You can also find it at radio.foxnews.com. I will post all that information. Next Monday, I do not think I am going to be on Newsmax, because I am going down to Washington, D.C., because somebody who I've known on X, have never met, is great place for the National Symphony Orchestra, and was kind enough to invite me and give me 4 tickets to the VIP section on Capitol Hill. So my husband and I are going with Hans von Spakovsky and his wife. So we're going to meet up with them down there. And then next week, following Friday, I'm in for, I believe, Rob Carson, but I got to check. Oh no, this coming Friday, I'm doing Brian Kilmeade show, and then I'm in for Andrew Wilkow. I'm doing back to back. I'm on from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So it's Brian Kilmeade from 9 a.m. to noon to 3 is Andrew Wilkow. I totally forgot. Oh, all right. I'll post it though. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless you, and have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.